Welcome back to My Steel Commodity Flux, the podcast where we track the trends, turns, and turbulence shaping global commodity markets. I'm Nikki Fu, Commercial Director at My Steel Global. Today, we're looking at the lithium-ion battery materials market. The market has been showing a firmer tone recently, with demand from both the power battery and energy storage sectors continuing to support production. At the same time, supply conditions and raw material costs are creating different levels of price support across the industry value chain. So, where are battery material prices heading, and what are the key factors shaping the outlook? Joining us today is Vincent Yan, Director of the Renewable Energy Research Institute at Me Steel. Vincent, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. I'd say the overall market outlook is constructive, but clearly differentiated across the value chain. Demand remains relatively healthy, but the price direction of each material depends on a different combination of supply, inventory, costs, and downstream demand.
Let's start with lithium carbonate, probably the most closely watched material in the battery supply chain.
Lithium carbonate is currently caught between near-term tightening and longer-term supply expectations. In July, the market saw a clear shift, but expectations of additional supply later in the year then put pressure on prices. For August, we expect this tension to continue. On the one hand, lithium salt plant maintenance and strong downstream demand are expected to drive further destocking. The report estimates around 18,000 tons of inventory drawdown for August. On the other hand, the market is watching future supply growth closely. So our view is that lithium carbonate prices should remain supported in August, but the upside is likely to be relatively measured rather than the start of a sustained rally.
So the key question is whether near-term tightening can outweigh expectations of future supply growth.
Exactly. And that's why we're paying close attention to inventory trends and the spot market. If physical tightness continues to strengthen while longer-term supply expectations become less dominant, that would provide additional upside support.
Let's move further downstream to LFP. What are you seeing there?
This is a very interesting part of the market. LFP cell production schedules are expected to maintain growth of around 6 to 8%, while overseas demand remains strong. However, new LFP production capacity is not being released as quickly as the nominal production capacity suggests. Some new production lines are still facing commissioning and ramp-up issues, so there is an important distinction between nominal capacity and effective supply. For August, we expect LFP-related cathode materials to remain relatively firm, with strong demand providing support while effective supply growth remains constrained.
That sounds relatively bullish for LFP, but does the same apply to anode materials?
Not exactly. The anode market has stronger cost pressure, but the price transmission is more limited in the short term. Petroleum coke and needle coke prices rose in July, pushing up raw material costs, while graphitization processing fees remained firm amid tight capacity. Outsourced graphitization capacity was also running close to full utilization, limiting the pace of anode material production growth and keeping production costs elevated. However, August prices are expected to remain largely based on existing contracts, so our forecast is for anode prices to remain broadly stable in August. Looking further ahead, stronger seasonal demand could create more upward pressure when new contracts are negotiated.
So here we have an interesting contrast: rising costs but relatively stable prices.
Yeah, we also need to consider contract timing, downstream bargaining power, and actual demand.
Then what about electrolytes? Are they showing stronger price momentum?
Yes, particularly for LiPF6. The market has seen improving demand, while supply conditions are relatively tighter in some areas. In July, China's domestic LiPF6 production reached around 29,300 tons, up 2.81% month on month. For August, our forecast is for LiPF6 prices to remain firm with an upward bias. So compared with anode materials, the electrolyte market currently has stronger near-term price momentum.
And finally, what are you seeing in copper and aluminum foil?
Our point is both remain relatively constructive. For copper foil, the overall market is expected to remain in a tight balance, while ultra-thin copper foil continues to face supply constraints. We therefore expect processing fees to have further upside potential in August. For aluminum foil, demand is being supported not only by the traditional battery market, but also by emerging sodium-ion storage demand. The report notes that European battery aluminum foil self-sufficiency is only around 34%, creating additional import demand. So for August, we expect aluminum foil processing fees to remain firm, with premiums for ultra-thin, coated, and sodium-ion battery foils potentially widening further.
If looking ahead, what are the key indicators you would watch?
I would focus on four things. First, inventory trends. Second, effective capacity, especially how quickly new production lines ramp up. Third, downstream production schedules. And finally, cost pass-through. Those indicators should give us a better understanding of where the market is heading before the full impact becomes visible in prices.
The overall message is not simply that battery material prices are going up. It's that the market is becoming increasingly differentiated, and the price direction depends on how supply, demand, costs, and inventories interact in each segment.
Exactly. And that's where we see the value of market-based price forecasting. Rather than looking at a single indicator, we track the entire chain. From upstream raw materials and production costs to downstream demand, inventories, and capacity utilization, that allows us to distinguish between short-term price movements and more sustainable market trends.
That's a great point to wrap up. Vincent, thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you. It was great speaking with you.
Thanks to everyone for listening. If you'd like to follow the latest developments across lithium, cathode materials, anode materials, electrolytes, copper foil and aluminum foil, MySteel's latest battery materials price forecast report provides a deeper view of the market fundamentals and price outlook across the value chain. Thanks for listening to MySteel Commodity Flux. Until next time, keep tracking the flows.